Is Sonic Frontiers no longer a good game? That's what a lot of those hot take opinionated think pieces would like to question, followed by a generous donation of your time to their little piggy bank. They're oink oinking for views, you see. But nonetheless, these questions are coming from a legitimate place, as Sonic Frontiers has recently come out with its third final DLC update, The Final Horizon. Hey beautiful humans, I'm RidersDX, and today I'm here to go through this final DLC update to help you decide whether these hot take opinions have any merit to them, or if we need to donate to their Get Well Soon fund, because as Taylor Swift once said, they might just be f***ed in the head. Because honestly, how could an optional DLC pack ruin a game if you think about it? It doesn't make sense. I'm just going to put it out here because there's no way I can pretend to do this for like 2 more minutes. I absolutely do not think this DLC pack drags the game down in any significant way. The base game is still a solid campaign and one of the best Sonic games to have come out in ages. With that being said though, in classic Sega and Sonic Team fashion, there's still a lot more to unpack here, as the reaction to this DLC pack makes a lot of sense given the self-crafted stakes of it. Without going into too many spoilers, the original ending of Sonic Frontiers was less than stellar. It wasn't this migraine-inducing bitch of a boss that kept you up for consecutive nights, but rather it was a sleepy tortoise that wouldn't move no matter how much you poked it. It just came and went, and you were honestly just left wondering how a game this massive could have amounted to something that was pretty much a whole lot of nothing. So this DLC pack aims to offer an alternative for the game that's much more expansive in nature with extra content, and it was ridiculously hyped by the addition of a playable Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, making this the first mainline Sonic game to have this many playable characters since 06, which was almost 20 years ago. Like, I'm gonna be taking dementia medication any day now. This DLC pack was thus generating a lot of hype within the fanbase, and I can't help but be amused because who in their right mind would put this much hype behind a free DLC update, especially when it comes to a Sonic game? Have we learned nothing from things like episode Shadow and Forces or the Amigo levels of 06? Sonic has literally never given us much to feast on through DLC until now. Make no mistake, The Final Horizon is a beast of a free update. In fact, in a lot of ways, I would not have blamed them if this wasn't free. There is so much content to dive into here, and I'm just very happy to see an investment like this in Sonic in the first place. But with so much content in this update, why are some people burning down houses and local businesses? Well, I'm going to dive into the 3 main parts of this update in my eyes, from the most impressive to the most damning in terms of causing this outcry. So probably the most solid part of this update is the redesigned Oranos Island itself. So you enter this DLC by reaching and entering a giant ring in the original Oranos. It then plays a cutscene, Uno reversing Tails', Knuckles', and Amy's sacrifice to allow them to search for the Chaos Emeralds, while Sonic does something else. I honestly still don't understand what he's doing, but no matter who you play as, you get to explore a brand new, entirely different version of Oranos filled to the brim with new and unique challenges. I mean, we essentially got a brand new island with this update, which I should have expected since this new island was necessary to accommodate the new characters, but I was still pretty shook, especially because it's not like this island was just a reordering of things already existing in original Oranos. No, we saw a good mix of both updated, more challenging versions of previous challenges in the base game, and also brand new challenges to craft an island that's really fun to go through even after having played the whole game. It's sort of the perfect DLC expansion, one that builds on the base game and just gives you more to do. What's also really fun about this new island is that there are a bunch of other challenges that can only be done by the 3 new characters added in. They're color coded, so it's easy to tell who needs to do what, and it's a fun way to get to know the new characters' abilities and physics. Along with the new island, there's also new cyberspace levels. Yeah, I still don't really like cyberspace levels. Don't get me wrong, they're not unplayable or anything like that, but the ones in the original base game were just not that fun to me. They honestly felt like expansion levels to Forces, right down to the music, which I find to be super obnoxious. It's literally just noise bouncing around in a washing machine. The levels in this DLC pack though are intriguing to say the least. They're a lot more ballsy in terms of the level design, taking so many more different risks compared to the original games. There's one level for instance that plays a lot with gravity, another one where Sonic kinda acts like a car engine and needs to boost for a specific amount of time to get into a higher gear that increases speed. I don't know, it's honestly very strange and not normal. These levels are also a lot more open-ended than typical. I mean, there's still a general path to follow on, but the level design has many more branching paths than what I'm used to, and I do see a lot of potential in Sonic Team's 3D level design now. I still don't necessarily love these levels. I really do think the music had a lot to do with it. This electro dubstep hybrid is really overstaying its welcome for me. The levels though also had a bunch of side objectives you could complete that involve you gathering certain items. While I appreciate the extra mile, going forward and backwards in these levels is very difficult like it is in most boost levels, and I just don't think these objectives highlight the strengths of these levels, besides maybe the Tails ghost. Good thing however is that these levels are even less integral to progressing through the game game than they were in the original. I pretty much did not need to do any of them to get through the campaign, so if you don't like them, they can be completely ignored, which is nice. Any day that I don't have to put up with that tomfoolery is a good day. So with a great island and intriguing cyberspace levels, there's already a lot to love about this update. But how are the characters? The characters where arguably a lot of the DLC's discourse is stemming from. So the addition of Tails, Knuckles, and Amy isn't just a wig you put on Sonic and call it a day. No, these three were given their own unique abilities and physics to make them wholly unique experiences in Sonic Frontiers. And if you think about it, that's honestly a lot for a DLC pack, because if you put into perspective how long it took this team to refine Sonic enough for this sort of game, imagine what they had to do to get these three ready. I'm honestly still very impressed that these three are functional in the pack. It's not that I think it was impossible to get three well-made characters for this DLC pack, but more so based on Sonic Team's history that I was pleasantly surprised. Of course though, there are both pros and cons to all of them. We're going to start with my favorite character, which will absolutely not shock you in any way possible. The queen of platformers, Amy Rose. Yes, I'm talking about Amy who controlled like a box in Sonic Adventure, the Amy who adopted invisibility no one asked for in 06. Amy was a character I was least expecting to enjoy in this update. I mean really, she just didn't have a lot of good history to back her up. But in a way, maybe that worked in her favor because the team didn't feel as much pressure to make previous mechanics of hers work in this new sort of game. Amy is kind of just a slower but more aerial Sonic. She has a triple jump and is able to descend slowly from the air, and to be honest, this is a really useful ability. All these platforms and mountains that maybe were a little difficult for Sonic to navigate feel like a breeze for Amy, not to mention fun and natural. Amy I guess decided to get into tarot cards at some point though, as that is her new source of power here, and it's random but it fits into the Frontiers environment well. I've always thought Amy would make a good witch, would not put witchcraft past her, at least when it comes to the version of Amy that literally tried to bully Sonic into marriage.
Sonic, this time there's no way out of marrying me.
I seriously have almost no complaints about Amy. She was just designed in a way that fits really well into the game here, and I gotta say, they really thought her moveset out well. As for the other two, I'm going with Tails next because even though he has some flaws to him, he is still a ton of fun to mess with here. Tails is probably the character I actually was most excited for, because I still have really fond memories of breaking Sonic Adventure with him, and Frontiers seemed like the perfect kind of game to let Tails' overpowered flying ability make a return. But as for his flying here, it is appropriately nerfed, and while it's not as insane as I would like it to be, it's still a fun way to traverse through the island. However, one thing they brought to Tails that I was not expecting to see was his tornado. And his tornado is absolutely bonkers. When you're able to use this thing, it can fly throughout the island going up and down with practically no limit, especially if you have unlimited boosts activated. It's absolute insanity, but a whole lot of fun to mess around with. I honestly think if this were an isolated thing, Tails would by far be my favorite character to play. The only downside to him is he doesn't have a homing attack, so it's a little hard to do some of the platforming design for Sonic. But I suppose if creative enough, the flying can certainly make up for that. Still, it would have been nice to just have the homing attack just so I could do the more precise platforming the way that I would prefer to do it, but that's just me. Then last and unfortunately least is a character I was really disappointed but unfortunately not surprised by. Knuckles. You just gotta sit there and think, how in the world could they have ever screwed up a character like Knuckles for this game? His gliding ability works so well in both adventure games, and his climbing makes him a character that's by far the most natural fit for an open world game. In fact, I've always thought if Knuckles ever got a chance at a spin-off game again, it should be an open world sandbox a la Breath of the Wild. So tell me why, when I play Knuckles for the first time, he controls like a 1900s lawnmower. He honestly just goes wherever he wants for the most part, and it is infuriating. His gliding is the biggest disappointment of this DLC. First of all, why is there this annoying delay before he gets into his glide? There's no point to it, and all it does is feel awkward and stiff. I thought I left high school a long time ago. Then when he actually starts gliding, he turns like a stick of butter. It's just impossible to make any sort of turn with him. The only time the glide reliably works is if you're going in a straight line, which is complete bullshit. And another thing that irked me was the fact that Knuckles is only allowed to climb these walls with red coloring on them. Since when? Who made up this rule? Knuckles is a master treasure hunter, Sega. No wall is supposed to be impenetrable to his gloves, so please tell me why Knuckles all of a sudden can only climb these specific set of walls. Has he become a rich asshole who can't bear the thought of his $1 million gloves touching the everyman's wall? Is he only allowed to climb up diamond encrusted structures? Honestly, this really grinds my gears because it wouldn't even make Knuckles that overpowered by letting him climb most structures. He still would have to navigate his way to get to some of these hard to reach floating blocks. If anything, it just This would have made things easier so I wouldn't immediately drop down to the ground if I accidentally climbed past my red area into an unclimbable part of the wall. The only thing I really liked about Knuckles is that he gets the boost that can burrow through enemies, so at least he has that. One more thing about Knuckles that actually applies to all these characters is that you should definitely not try to battle any guardians with them. When you start off the DLC with these characters, they need to be leveled up in the same way you spent the whole game doing for Sonic. A good thing is that it does not take long to level up these characters. Skill points are very easy to obtain without having to battle any guardians. But these guardians are actually so much harder to battle than the original games that even as Sonic, they're still challenging, so yeah, don't even try. Overall, at first, I was very disappointed with the characters because they're not fun where they're not upgraded, and you're dropped on an island where they really need to be upgraded like right away. But once they were, I still managed to have fun playing with them, even Knuckles in some ways. There's ways to improve upon them, but if anything, this serves as a really solid foundation for what I hope is going to be a future title. Please, Sega, Knuckles really needs the redemption. He already looks like a mop. Please don't let him play like one too for the rest of his life. But okay, we're going to get into what I believe it to be the biggest contention factor for Frontiers is, and as minor as it seems to be on the surface, it's really f***ed up a lot of people. It's the implementation of the perfect parry. So in the original Frontiers, Sonic has a parry move to help him deflect attacks. This move was seen as a bit of a joke to most people because you could just hold it for an indefinite period of time and reflect all attacks easily. It made the big Supersonic bosses in particular a lot easier than people probably envisioned for them. So Sonic Team in classic fashion tried to fix this. And boy did they fix it, because now this perfect parry lasts for literal seconds before Sonic lets go of it and you need to activate it again. So now your timing has to be almost perfect to defeat the bosses in the game, which in theory sounds like a reasonable way to increase the challenge of the game. In reality though, it resulted in a literal army of screaming men on the internet because this exponentially increased the difficulty of the bosses. And the only reason this was as noticeable as it was is because the final trial you play in the DLC for the Master Coco requires you to replay the 3 Titan bosses you battled previously, the difference being you have no way to collect rings, so you need to defeat all 3 of them before your ring counter hits 0. Now first off, girly, why is this DLC pack making us replay bosses from the base game? I thought we left this sort of game design behind with Shadow the Hedgehog. It wasn't enough that you assholes made us play Westopolis 10 times. Secondly, the perfect parry in this trial exposed just how annoying these bosses can be. Especially the second one, where if you miss one of the parries, you have to wait like 20 seconds before you have another shot. It was infuriating. So you can clearly see that I have a good understanding of how frustrating this is. Now here's why it's really not that big of a deal. You see folks, Sonic Frontiers has a revolutionary feature that I would like to call the difficulty setting. If you just change the setting to easy, the parry gets a few more seconds added onto it, and it makes these bosses a lot more tolerable to battle. I played this whole DLC pack on easy. I'm not ashamed whatsoever. I saw the discourse over this parry and I was like, I ain't subjecting myself to that. This is probably going to make the wrong people mad at me, but I have a punchable face, so it's really no use at this point. But I really think people just need to take a step back and realize that if a game is too difficult and there's an option to bring that difficulty down, there's no shame in playing it first on easy and then going back to it on a higher difficulty if you so desire. There definitely can be an argument made for Sonic Team making the parry too short for normal difficulty, but I mean, if there's an option to make things easier, I don't see the big deal. The game is still able to be played and finished and enjoyed. I just see some of these big YouTubers making these long essays on how this DLC pack ruined Frontiers with so much of the content being focused on this issue, and it just, I don't live in the same universe. I'm not speaking the same language. I just don't get it. Even on easy, I was having a hard time in this trial, but my only legit criticism for it is I think it's dumb the game is forcing me to replay these bosses in the first place, but that's just me. Once I practiced the parry enough though, I eventually was able to play through these bosses no problem. It just takes practice, and again, I had no shame playing this on easy, and if I'm being honest, I have no interest in subjecting myself to a shorter parry on a higher difficulty. I'm a grown-ass adult with a full-time job. I don't need a video game to chew up my brain and spit it out. My job already does that for me. So that was a lot more ranting than I was initially going for, but my point still stands. A lot of the criticism for this DLC is rooted in that, and I just think Knuckles is still the biggest insult standing here. The final horizon isn't perfect by any means. I've mentioned various aspects I'm not a big fan of, but to insinuate that this actually brings the game quality down enough for it to be significant, I have to laugh. I have to choke, because I think that's just crazy. First of all, this is completely optional. You can ignore that fat ass ring in Uranus every time you see it and no one will care. Second of all, though this DLC has its flaws, there is so much it brings to this game that is not only fun, but what I can only imagine is a taste of the greatness that could come in the next mainline Sonic game. I'm still quite impressed with the amount of creativity in the design of both the island and the cyberspace levels this time around. They evoke a sense of confidence that I haven't seen from Sonic Team in a while. They know some of this level design is weird, but somehow it works for the most part, and their comfort with 3D platforming is something I'm very excited about. Also, being able to play as Tails, Knuckles, and Amy and having fun with it for the most part is repairing a deep childhood wound that was inflicted on me with Unleashed, which only spread for years to come. I love being able to play as these characters, and despite some of their flaws, the pure joy I had in breaking the game with these characters is something I really and truly welcome. I didn't mention this yet, but this DLC also adds a lot more context to the storytelling and lore of Frontiers. There's a host of new character interactions to go through, including some between Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Eggman that were non-existent in the original, along with background, all the Titan Guardians, and explanations for other things that happen in the game. It's this sense of world building that I truly appreciate for a Sonic game, because it's honestly been so long since we've had a mainline title that put this much effort into it, and as a diehard Sonic fan, it's really pleasing to see how they can love and care for these characters as much as we do to be able to give them these fleshed out storylines. There's just so much good stuff here beyond the bad, and if anything, I hope you can take that away from this video. I mean, it's totally fine if you're not a fan of this DLC overall. Everyone is, of course, entitled to their opinion, but I just think certain criticisms are misplaced and unwarranted in the grand scheme of things. Like, I seriously think difficulty complaints shouldn't weigh that much if there's an actual difficulty setting there to fix that, but let me not beat a dead horse now. It is dead after all. Anyway folks, let me know your thoughts on the Frontiers DLC in the comment section below. Do you agree with me, or do you want to chew me out in the comment section? I want to hear it all, so come on. Like I said, I have a punchable face, so go ahead and give me your worst. But let me know your thoughts, and also let me know your thoughts on Frontiers overall. Are you satisfied with the game as a whole now? Let me know why not. And yeah, if you like videos like this, then be sure to subscribe to my channel, because I've got more video essays coming out in the future. I know Sonic Superstars is coming out. I'm going to be making a video on that as soon as I get my hands on it, so can't wait for that. And yeah, thank you so much. This is Riders, riding out.